Okay, thanks Richard. Thank you and welcome to my presentation. I think some of you may have seen me do these before. It's about my third time doing this on various different topics, and also some of you may already know about NSRS. So apologies if some of this is already known to you. I'm trying to sort of pitch across the complete audience level of understanding. So I've got basically 20 or so slides, a couple of videos if we've got time, but I'm very much aware that lunch is beckoning, and of course, as we all know, that the main reason why you've come here is to have a really good lunch and across the line. So if you have any questions during the my talk, then please just stick your hand up and ask. I don't mind. I could go on for hours about NSRS. It's I was just saying downstairs, as a child of the 60s, having your own Thunderbird 4 and all the kit to fly out is just absolutely brilliant for me. So I really couldn't have asked for a better job to have than the one I've got at the moment. Nemo itself, as I'm sure you're aware, is the name of the submarine. It's actually quite interesting. They picked the name Nemo. Obviously, Captain Nemo in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was a mad psychotic murderer. Obviously, it's not Captain Nemo, so it's just Nemo. But Nemo was a fish with asymmetric fins, so presumably swims around in circles a lot. So that is something that our submarine definitely doesn't do when it's operational. And some of you may know that we've currently got what we call an operational defect on the system through a problem with the Zebra batteries. Zebra battery is effectively molten salts, uses electrolyte, delivers a lot of power, but the powers that be, when they procured them, decided that although the batteries would have a 10-year life normally driving a bus, which is what they normally do, it was decided that because they weren't being used in that way, they would last twice as long, based on absolutely no information from the OEM. So at the moment we've got a little problem, and we're having some new batteries built right now as a one-off purchase to carry us through to the end of the project's time. But I'll talk basically a bit more about the system in a second. I just wanted to sort of run you through the whys and wherefores of why we have this contingency. It's it's there for a reason. You probably don't hear about all the submarines that have an accident, so I'll talk about those in a second, but you will remember the Kursk, and some of you may remember the ARA San Juan a couple of years ago. Yeah. But it's quite an interesting sort of line of work. It's basically an insurance policy, what we have here in the NSRS. The Kursk was as I said, was the most famous, if you like, or infamous accident that happened. Obviously, the UK had quite a lot of its own incidents. The Thetis sinking off the Mersey in 1939 was probably the most pitiful incident, when 99 people lost their basic lives by suffocating in a submarine where the stern was actually sticking out of the water, so it's people watching it happen. And we had a submarine rescue capability in the form of LR5, which is a submersible which could be used to go down and rescue people prior to NSRS coming online. And LR5 is now actually the Australians' submarine rescue system vehicle, so it's still around. So these things do last quite a long time. Obviously, with the Kursk, there were 23 guys alive for a period, and if they'd actually been trained to look after themselves in a situation like that, they could have lasted a lot longer. As it was, they had an accident within the accident, if you like, and were sadly lost. But the principle was that in this situation, NATO wanted to have a way of rescuing people in that situation, if it was obviously a NATO submarine, but equally be used around the world for a rescue situation. So we very much operate in a NATO posture, but we would go and rescue any submarine. I talked about incidents. As a diver, I was amazed when I took on this job to find out how many incidents submarines actually occur. There have been obviously quite a few that have made the press, but they tend to get forgotten. So the Kursk was really the, if you like, the Costa Concordia or the Titanic moment for the submarine community. But we still have this sort of drip feed of incidents that happen right up to the present day, when in 2019 the Shah project submarine had a fire, and 14 senior officers from the Russian Navy were killed sadly in that incident. And in terms of mobile systems, which is what NSOS of course is, the ARO San Juan was I guess one of the most tragic instances, where 44 guys lost their lives when the submarine had a catastrophic flood into the battery compartment, lost all power and sank in deep water, and then imploded when it went to past its crush depth. So obviously, you know, it just goes to sort of highlight the risks that these guys are under, and the near misses in terms of when you see collisions that recurred, that actually occur in the submarine community. So it is a relevant sort of risk, and you know, like all insurance policies, you have to pay to have a capability or a risk mitigation to actually deal with the contingency if it does arise. There is a worldwide capability, so various countries now have various systems. Unfortunately, obviously the laser won't show on the screen, but you know, we've got LR5, the Australian, we've got Earth, which is a very large Swedish rescue vehicle. They can actually lift the whole crew out of their submarines in one lift. 34 guys, so much bigger than the NSOS, which we'll talk about in a minute. And also we have intervention capabilities, so we actually replenish the systems within the submarine that have capacity to enable the submariners to remain in the submarine, as I was alluding to, the Curse guys. So replenishing that capability is obviously very important as well. Worldwide capability, and the key point is that we now coordinate the rescue effort through something called the International Submarine Escape and Rescue Liaison Organisation. So it's a NATO body which is subordinate to something called the SMERG. Now the SMERG stands for the Submarine Escape and Rescue Working Group, and they always, when I was the head of diving in the Navy, they always used to have their meetings in Garmisch, in Bavaria. I just could not understand why submariners were having a meeting in the ski resort. But it turns out it's where the Americans go for when they want to have, or, you know, host a meeting. They'll do it in Garmisch because they have a pretty big hotel there, and you can go and have meetings there. So, but that was the reason why. And I was very glad to find out why in the end I actually went a couple of years ago. The ICEMERLO organisation is there to coordinate rescue efforts, and to make sure that when we want to fly this stuff around the world, we don't all try and bid for the same aircraft. And I'll talk a little bit more about the air mobility piece later on. But that coordination is essential to making sure that we can actually get the right piece of kit to the submarine requiring it in the fastest possible time. They all have a different level of capability and a different level of support that's needed to get them out there. Okay, NSOS, my role as the operations officer is, as I mentioned, it is brilliant having that, being in charge of the capability, but it's the tri-national element to it that I find really interesting. The three nations that actually operate the submarine, I'll mention it in a second, but having all those people sort of trying to operate the system and three nations operating together is I think, a really interesting circumstance, given what we're going through now with Brexit and the talk about how things need to be, we need to separate from Europe. So I mentioned it's tri-nationally owned, France, Norway and the UK. There were other countries involved to start off with. They gradually pulled out as the project developed. And the US was involved originally, they left, and in fact we're still waiting for the US to actually get their system fully commissioned. So it's now the three nations, and to be honest, it is a success story, because despite all the challenges of operating with France and Norway, and the different sort of pulls and pushes from their own national requirements, we do actually work pretty well together. It's a government-owned contractor-operator system, so you'll probably be aware that JFD are currently the contractor that we have selected in this phase of its service. In a couple of years, there'll be another letting of the contract, so another company may well take JFD's place. We still don't know yet, and there are companies that are interested in it, because it is still quite a feather in the cap of JFD to be running this system for the three countries. Service life 25 years, 2032 is when it's going out of service. So we're just starting to look at what is going to be the son of NSRS. Long way to go yet. The Swedes are actually looking at the same issue there. Submarine actually goes out of service sooner, and therefore they're starting to look now as to see whether or not they can do something together with us. We're a bit concerned that other countries might want to join the NSRS party, only in the sense that if we only have one system, sharing it around 3 countries already is quite a challenge. If you get any more countries adding to that, then obviously that becomes a even steeper sort of demand on the platform. Based in Faslane in Scotland, flyable, has secure SATCOMs, and we develop dormant rescue plans to make sure that we can fly it to any airport that we need to in the world, and then drive it from the airport to the port where the ship that we're going to mobilise to is based. So that is obviously quite a logistical nightmare in some respects. Getting countries to actually prepare for that can be a challenge. We recently had a really good demonstration from the Greeks, who ran a whole system. They basically planned the whole move from the airport to the port of Piraeus, just to demonstrate how they would actually support that if it happened. And it was a really good example of how it could be done. The system gets classed once it's mobilised, so we have a Lloyd surveyor to come and actually certify it for use once it's been built. And we use a air-based saturation decompression system, which is unlike what you'll see in the offshore industry, where you'll be using Trimix or Heliox or Nitrox. We're looking at whether or not we need to go to a mixed gas system, but currently we're still using air, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that later on. It has to be ready 98% of the time, and we literally have just got to the stage now where it's not going to be 98% because we've got this problem with the batteries. So that target is being broken. It's unavoidable. But what we do have in place is because of this international agreement, we now have Sweden and the US covering our requirements for the NATO rescue system. Pretty high sea state operations, sea state 6. Our time to first intervention, I'll talk about these in a second, 56 hours. Time to first rescue, 72 hours. And it says baseline rescue scenario, that's a Northern European rescue scenario. So we're always basing the time to get to the submarine around a 6-hour transit flight for the whole system. We're supposed to be able to lift 150 people out of a submarine who might be at 6 bar absolute. That's pretty demanding. That's a very hostile environment to be in. For those who don't know, the demands, the physiological demands on people under that pressure is extraordinarily bad because of the toxicity of oxygen under partial pressure like that. So whether or not we'd actually ever have to do that is a moot point, and I've been trying to find out the reason why those figures were selected, and all I can find out so far is because that's basically a deeper or a greater pressure than the LR5 had, so it was just decided that we'd bump it up a bit to deeper, greater pressure. Critically, the minimum depth is 40 metres. 20 metres are given a push, and that's tidal stream dependent. So you imagine that you're trying to drive a little submarine onto a bigger submarine and trying to put a hatch onto the hatch of the submarine, and doing that in a strong tidal stream, trying to get the actual seal to mate is extremely challenging because it relies on differential pressures. So at 20 metres, that's quite a challenge for a 29-ton submarine. And the rescue angle 60 degrees, which basically means that the submarine is at a 60-degree angle, we can still mate to it. We have to sail on time, so we have a critical time to actually mobilise the system onto the actual ship, and we've got to be able to stay out in the weather conditions that we're facing until we've got conditions that are suitable for launch and recovery. So the actual rescue operation concept is based on three parts. It's an intervention, which I've mentioned before, where we will get an ROV and pass equipment down to the submarine. Then the rescue, which is done with the SRV, and provided there is no contamination within the submarine, the pressure is at atmospheric pressure. We simply send the submarine down, and it picks people up and drops them off on the ship and then goes back down again. That's all it does. The third thing is the transfer of pressure, which is actually the USP, if you like, for the NSOS system. There's being able to rescue people at 6 bar and bring them to the surface and decompress them on the surface is actually pretty critical. Most submarines will carry 7 days worth of life support equipment on board, so they'll have oxygen candles and curtains to maintain the atmosphere inside the boat, but we can obviously resupply them with those stores from the ROV or the submarine itself. So the intervention system, this ROV, pretty powerful actually, pretty large work class ROV. It can go down to 1,000 metres, carry 650 kilograms of equipment, which is effectively the pods in which we load the life support equipment. It carries that in the sort of basket underneath the main part of the ROV here. It has a 5 and 7 axis manipulator, or 2 manipulators, one on 5 axis, one on 7 axis, to cut or remove wires or anything that's obstructing the hatches around the submarine. So that's similar sort of thing to the Scorpio, which was used to free the AS-28 Prince Russian submarine in 2005 when she was stuck in the sea near Japan, and a UK team took their ROV down and freed the Russian submarine. And JFD have all the photographs of Vladimir Putin all over their headquarters, so thanking the team for doing that. The LC, the pods, which you can see when being carried in the ROV there, are passed down to the submarine through the hatch. They have a basket rigged up to collect the pods that's dropped in. Hatch is then closed, and the submariners can then get the equipment out of the pod and replace the ones that they've used in their survival mode to extend the period that they can wait there. Then the rescue system, this will be sort of fairly obvious, but we can launch and recover the submarine every 4 hours. So every 4 hours we can deploy it. It goes down to the boat on the seabed, the disabled submarine, manoeuvres over the hatch, and starts to bring out the survivors. Most Western submarines are fitted with escape towers and rescue seats. I say most, the Germans don't currently. The Norwegians are about to buy German submarines, so they're going to stop having rescue seats, I think. But those that do have almost like a universal standard that they comply with. It's a NATO standard. It's certified mainly by NAVC for foreign submarines, but class societies can also certify the rescue seat as meeting the NATO standard. And it's designed, it has to be of a structure that can withstand having a submarine landing on it, 29-ton submarine, and actually making a hard seal to actually do the transfer. So that introduces quite substantial dynamic loads on the submarine, and therefore they have to be enabled to and assured to make sure that they can actually have a rescue. And interestingly enough, the San Juan did have an AFC inspection the year before it was lost, and there were some concerns about the viability of the rescue seat on the San Juan. And interestingly, the Americans did not take their pressurised rescue module with them to actually do a rescue. So whether or not they would have been able to, I'm not too sure. But it is pretty critical. The UK at the moment, we're still having a few issues, shall we say, with certifying our own rescue seats, trying to find the way that we should do that properly. But that is something that is in hand. Okay, so the SRV itself, this is actually I guess the heart of the NSOS system. We have two crew in the cockpit here, and they remain inside this part of the submarine at atmospheric pressure. They're not subjected to anything other than the pressure they have when they leave surface. All the pilots you may even see them on TV. Some of them get involved in the David Attenborough shows. There's a small cadre of these guys who basically operate all the world's SRSs, all the world's submarine rescue vehicles, and they're sort of shared amongst the SRS community. The pilot training takes obviously quite a long time, but there is a training program in place with JFD and other rescue vessel operators. The submarine has what's called a rescue chamber in the back, and that's one side of it. So on the other side, you have the same number of people. It can take up to 15 passengers normally. So 15 passengers and 3 crew. The last crew member is also in the back there, and he's a rescue chamber operator. And these guys they're all volunteers, and they're I guess the people who have to take the biggest risk in any submarine rescue. Because up until that point, when they've gone into the rescue chamber and they've dived on a submarine that is under pressure in the hull, they are perfectly fine. But once they've been pressurised and they go down, certainly anything below 2.8 bar of pressure, they are starting to accumulate pretty high doses of oxygen. So you also have the decompression situation as well, but it's this unit-to-pulmonary toxic dose of oxygen that we have to watch out for. So they're all volunteers. Their course is pretty arduous, pretty difficult, and we quite often have people who don't pass it. We simply could not allow somebody who's not competent to go into that submarine as the one and only rescue chamber operator to look after that part of the evolution. So when the submarine goes down, it manoeuvres over the rescue seat that I showed you, and they then operate a small low volume pump to start pumping water out of the housing over which the hatch has been placed over the hatch. So there's a rubber seal around that, start pumping that out, and they get what's called a soft seal. Once the soft seal has been achieved, they switch on a higher volume pump, higher pressure pump, and that sucks all the water out. And the water's either pumped overboard, which takes more power, or we just drop it into the submarine. Depends on the condition of the submarine. Once that's been done, that's then called the hard seal. The guy will open the hatch, the RCO will open the hatch in the bottom of the submarine here. And once that's done, he'll jump onto the top of the submarine's hatch with his hammer, give it a few slams, and invite them to open their hatch. We never open a submarine hatch; they have to do it themselves. If they can't, if there's nobody there, then there is a contingency for doing that, but we are in two minds as to whether or not it's too risky for the guy going down there. Once the hatch is open, obviously you can start transferring the people out. As I said, at the max it's 15. By class, we would put no more than 9, and we'd also have to take into account the density of water to see if there's something that can actually get back to the surface. So it's a weight issue more than anything, and also a emergency oxygen availability. But at a push, they'll put 15 in there and get to the surface as fast as they can. So, any questions about the SRV and that part of it? Okay, so once they've been brought,
how do you equalise pressure between the rescue submarine and the submarine and the subject?
So when the submarine SRV leaves the deck, it will have been connected the back end here to the transfer under pressure complex and pressurised to the pressure that's in the submarine. We should have that information. If we've got live people in the submarine, we'll be talking to them on underwater telephone, finding out what exactly the conditions are in the submarine. Then, whilst the SRV could, if it had to, pressurise itself to the same pressure, obviously we'd have to replenish the onboard gas. So we pressurise the rescue chamber just to a little bit less than the submarine. It dives, it makes a seal, and then we just increase the pressure to meet the submarine, so we don't use too much gas up and we don't force any more gas into the submarine. But we just want to make sure that we don't get an inrush of bad contaminated atmosphere into the SRV. That's how we vary it. For situations where we don't know what or if the pressure changes, as I said, we can actually make up depth as we go along with the onboard gas that we have in the boat.
And you're all breathing standard air?
We're all breathing standard air, yeah. Okay, so I said 4-hour cycle if it's going good, and the sort of stated ability is to be able to rescue 48 people in 24 hours. That's the target time. So it does take quite a long time. You imagine having to get 150 people out of the submarine to get everybody out. So that's why we operate in 2 watches, and we need a lot of people to actually make this happen. Okay, the transfer under pressure side of things. If you remember the previous slide about what JFD do, they operate everything apart from the TUP system, the transfer under pressure system. And the reason for that is because we don't use trimix. We can't get commercial divers to operate the system. It has to be GFE, as we call it, government forces. Some say GFE because it's government forces are expendable. But it's Navy divers, and it's Navy divers from France, Norway, and the UK. It's also some submariners from France, and hyperbaric medics, so specially trained hyperbaric medics, and a total team for one cycle, so for one full load of the system is 44 people. It's quite a lot of guys to actually man the system. We can actually put inside there 84 people in total. So it's quite a large number of people in a decompression system. There's nothing else like it in the world, to be honest. The Americans have a similar system, but not exactly the same. They don't have any treatment chambers, so we can actually put 4 guys on stretchers into the system, as well as the people who are just sitting on benches. So the main chambers together will carry 60, and then in the treatment chamber at the end we'll have 12 as well. So a total of 72 people in the system normally. There's other ways of managing it, but we can have that amount of people. The control module, as you see here, you've got French, Norwegian, and British operators. The control module can be, or the supervisors in there can be managing 8 different compression chambers, or 8 different chambers all connected by airlocks together at separate depths. So it's a really, really demanding requirement for the supervisor. And that's the reason why we've now actually started to use two. We always put two supervisors in the system. Obviously, legally, one is designated as a supervisor, and his oppo, his opposite number, acts as his sort of chief of staff, if you like, or assistant, just to make sure that they don't get anything wrong. You can imagine what would happen if you told one chamber to go to the wrong depth. It could completely compromise the decompression profile of the people who are in there. The medics will go in and out, so we'll have hyperbaric medical specialists who will go in and treat people who are suffering from particular illness or having decompression sickness or whatever it is, and we've got ways of actually getting those people in there. We can also attach two small chambers to it. Theoretically, they're flyable, but we would never actually fly anybody in a one-man chamber, two-man chamber. And we tend to use it for things like taking bodies out or passing provisions into the system. Pretty complex piece of kit, and that's the bulk of the system there in terms of the footprint that we put onto the ship. Yeah.
Obviously, the divers are all forces, yes. What about the operators and the people that run the system on deck, so to speak?
Yeah, so they'll be the contractors.
Okay.
So it's only the guys who. A couple of things. One's a legal one. We do not operate under the diving work regulations. The mod. When I was SFD, we did. And I'd agree with the lead inspector at HSC that that's the way we do it, and we're working quite okay under that. But there have been some changes in mod diving safety regulations, which has now prevented that happening.
So if they're on they must have dive experience themselves, so they're dealing with the submarine. So they, like you do with a DSV, you've got the same sort of style where there's speaking to a diver.
Yeah, and exactly. There's quite a few of the guys from JFD, work offshore, come back in. Because obviously we're not using this system all the time. There's a core team in JFD, about 20 guys, but then they'll bring in others for a surge when we actually deploy the thing for operational reasons. It is very interesting actually. I mentioned this culture and this mix of cultures within the diving operation, because as I'm sure you can imagine, French divers have a different way of doing things, our guys have a different way of doing things, Norwegians are all different. There's all the languages that are flying around, there's a lot of chit chat and swearing. Everybody seems to swear in English. It's weird, but you hear the French doing it all the time. But it is quite a good banter in there, and given the current climate, it's when we did the last massive X, was when we get the whole system run out, we had 120 people up there, all different nations, and we think we just got about everybody who's going to operate the system to look at their, the people they're going to be operating with in the face and actually meet them, and I think it's really, really important. But it is a good example of how you can cooperate and make things work pretty well.
Chris, the hyperbaric chambers, they're all containerised, standard 40-foot containers.
40, 20 and 10-foot containers will put everything in.
So you fly those in, transport them by road, and then put those on the back of a suitable vessel. Effectively to pop them in as well.
I'll talk a little bit more, and actually there's a bit of video that I can show you how that all works. But that's actually part of the sort of challenge for the contracts to make sure that can happen. They're the ones that actually get kicked out of the door first, the contractors, to mobilise the thing out into the motion. So a couple of personnel who act as the dive technicians, or the TUP supervisor. In fact, JFD just lost their TUP supervisor, so we have to train somebody else up again now. But they're the ones that run around and maintain the system. So if anything goes wrong with it, the Navy operator will get hold of the JFD contractor and say, go and fix that. And he's like the on-site engineer, if you like. I think we just about covered everything that was in that slide. The system is automatically makes up the atmosphere. So whatever the depth is, it always makes it up to 21% oxygen. If we're going to go to something like a mixed gas system, we'll start to look at how we can adjust the sensors and turn it into a partial pressure system, which will enable us to have mixed gas in the system. Mixed gas, it provides you with this ability to avoid oxygen toxicity. That was a challenge I was going to mention. It's deep air, not like offshore systems. We actually have profiles that will have a lot of angst with the profiles. One of my colleagues decided that we weren't going to allow British divers to use the NSRS tables, and so we effectively stopped. The UK effectively had no pressurised rescue for about 2 years, and we had to rely on Norway and France to fulfil that role if we needed them. We changed that. We've managed to get the tables reviewed by the Americans in Panama City. Then that was endorsed by the DSTL, the Defence Scientific Technical Laboratory, and so we're now able to use the decompression profiles from France and actually the US that they've developed. And it does enable us to, with the manpower we've got, avoid any risk to the RCOs effectively, is what we have to do. So we've got to balance the risk between decompression, sickness, and pulmonary oxygen toxicity. So if you imagine the whole point of this is getting out to the submarine as fast as possible. 72 hours is the time that we've advertised for Northern Europe, and 56 hours for the intervention system. It's actually quite a demanding challenge that. We've got to use the world's largest aircraft, and we've got to move 350 tons of equipment on 22 trucks to an airfield, load it onto a plane, I'll say a plane. Each batch, each series got to be loaded onto planes, and then flown out, unloaded, moved back onto 22 trucks, taken to a ship and mobilised. And that's, yeah.
Is that all in one aircraft?
No, we can't. There isn't an aircraft that can carry 350 tons yet. But we use the Antonovs quite regularly. I'm currently trying to get the C5 Galaxy fleet online. Americans are working in a very different way than we do. The American loadmasters, no matter what's written on a piece of paper, you give them the loading document for the system, and they go, "No, I'm not using that." So everyone is totally different, and it's quite interesting. Even the Americans don't have a problem with it. They can't seem to stick to a standard.
So there's 22 trucks that take.
Yeah.
So is it that you do multiple trucks?
No. We have a contract to provide 22 trailers with the tractor unit to take it all.
And the planes, also 22 planes?
No. So planes-wise, good question the last. The intervention kit, it takes 2 C-17s to take the intervention. The rescue spread is 2 C-17s and 3 Antonov flights. So there is an organisation in DENS where it's a Defence Engineering Support Agency. They're responsible for moving defence stuff around the world. But I didn't know this until I got the job, but they basically trade air cargo in all the world's heavy lift aircraft around the world. It's like I've got a plane, an RF C-17 flying empty back from Australia. Oh, can I stick my tank in it? And so somebody put a tank in. It's just amazing. They trade it all, and so it's just when the balloon goes up, we have to try and get all the organisations that control these aircraft together to prioritise which ones are going to go for which rescue system. So when the Americans went to do the San Juan, all the Antonovs, the world's available Antonovs, the Ukrainian, we don't use the Russian ones because they're not fit for purpose. The Ukrainian Antonovs are all in the sky. So the Americans had to get a 4-star general to change the C5 fleet from part of it was flying the president. The other half was doing the Caribbean hurricane contingency thing. So they had to change it and they had to get an aircraft to fly them down. So that even the Americans ran out of planes is the point. So this coordination piece is pretty critical for.
So the handling systems for the intervention and rescue vehicles are all part of these containers. So you put them onto a standard ship.
Yeah.
Your A-frames and stuff.
Yeah, they have basically there's a deck interface section which goes in one of the C-17 flights. That's the first thing that gets bolted onto the ship. And getting the ship is another critical challenge actually for the thing that we do in Abbey Wood. Getting the right ship is absolutely essential. I mean, you'd all be aware of the DSVs and offshore support vessels. They're obviously the most likely vessels that we're going to go and use. Getting them on a mod charter is quite a challenge. Certainly for exercise purposes, it takes a few weeks. When the Northern Pioneer was chartered for the Kursk, that was done in a matter of days. Literally, somebody very senior in the government speaking to the vessel, the shipping company owner, and saying, "I want that vessel." It was doing a pipe lay at a time. The ship went in, everything was scraped off the back end, and it plopped on the LR5 and sailed it off to where the Kursk was. So it can be done, but we obviously need to make sure we've got the right SOLAS capacity. Also, we're going to have a lot of people on board the ship. It's the correct size with the amount of deck space. We can operate helicopters. All these sorts of challenges that we have to make sure we cover. And critically, DP as well, dynamic positioning. For those who don't know, we nearly lost the SRV in 2009. DP failure on the ship, and it was pretty close to having being run over by the MO ship. So DP is essential, and we obviously now prefer DP3, if not DP2 vessels for live operations. Yeah, I think that's all. So what I thought I'd do is show you a couple of quick videos. Got a bit of time before we get to port pass. So if you just bear with me 1 second.